Welcome to part 2 of the review. Today, we will finish this kit.
Here we have the body clamped to the bottom with the sub-assembly from step 16 stuck in between. And you can see there's a very small gap right there. And you can see the locating tabs on the floor pan there. So those would still be visible after the kit's assembled. You can see the body is not coming down all the way. To improve the fit, I cut down parts 15 and 16 so that their bottom edges are even with the bottom edge of part 20. And you can see the gap inside there has closed up. I also removed the locating tabs that would have been visible after the car was built. And now you can see that the bottom edge of the body is now even with the bottom of the car. I decided to test fit the clear parts to the body so that if I had to make any modifications to the body, I wouldn't be messing up my paint. The fit of the cabin glass is perfect. It fits very well. The clear glass for the headlight lenses also fits very well. I found in test fitting the cabin glass that due to the shape of these side windows, you really have to slide the part in from the front in a motion like that, and then it will seat pretty easily. If you try to go straight in, it will fight you and you'll risk breaking the parts. The headlight parts and the clear lenses to the headlights are single parts, and they snap into locating pins on the inside of the body, and you can see that I haven't done it that way. I found that test fitting those parts was very fiddly. The fit on the pins was very tight, and in trying to line things up and make things flush, you're constantly fighting the tension of the part and you're trying to line up both sides at once. So I decided it would be simpler to cut the parts loose. There's the headlight, and here's a clear lens, so that I'm only test fitting one side at a time, and I found it to be much simpler that way. Here's the completed chassis of the car. From the firewall back, I pretty much followed the kit instructions and built it as intended. I did add some photo etch seat belts because the car didn't come with any. From the firewall forward, I made a lot of changes to the kit. Several of the parts in the engine bay that the instructions would have you paint black or graphite are actually carbon fiber on the real car. On these parts I used carbon fiber decals. On these parts I painted the carbon fiber pattern by first painting them black and then putting a fine piece of mesh ribbon over the parts and then spray painting graphite or airbrushing graphite through that to get the carbon fiber pattern. If you build the kit according to the instructions, this area here, when you take the hood off, will look very plain and boring. At this point here, Revell had a flat plate going from here all the way down to the floor. There is no such plate on the real car. There's a cross member down there and a cross member up here. So I cut out the plate and used brass wire to put in the cross members and brass wire to make these braces here, which show up in pictures of the real car. The coolant hoses on this engine originally just go up to where that flat plate was and stop. They never make it to the radiator. So I added, using wire, radiator hoses that actually reach the radiator. And I added little bits and bobs that I saw in photographs of the real car. I think that's a Keurig coffee maker there. Might be the popcorn popper. I don't know what they are. But I add a lot of wires and hoses and tubes. Little doodads here and wires disappearing into nowhere. It just busies it up and makes it a little bit more presentable. So the brake vents on the back of the fender were originally molded closed with raised ridges representing the vanes inside the vent. I decided to actually install the vanes, and how I did that is I took a photo etch saw and I made cuts in the back edge of the fender and then slid thin strips of plastic in from the side, glue them in place, and then cut and sanded off all the mess I left on the outside of the fender. With it all painted black, it's not so easy to see that I actually did all that effort. So if you choose not to do the same, I wouldn't blame you. Here's the body painted up with decals on it. I was generally very pleased with the decals. There were some problems with them though. This black area on the hood is actually two separate decals, and there's a seam in the decals right there where the two decals meet, and it's very difficult to get that without a gap and without a ridge. I was not completely successful there. There are probably aftermarket decals available for this kit, and if they're not done the same way, that might be more fun. Another thing, there's supposed to be a Sirius decal on this side. I made the mistake of putting them on the window glass before the glass was installed, not realizing that there's a solid piece beneath the windshield wiper, and part of the decal should have gone there. It seems to be simulating the bottom edge of the window. So it goes there. This metallic area of this decal is not as flexible as the rest of the decals, and it seems to be very resistant to decal solvents. And since it didn't flex very well on both sides of the car, I got a little wrinkle in the decal right here. I was able to get the wrinkles out by heating up water in a tea kettle and then taking a silicone shaping sculpting tool, heating it up in the water and gently rolling it over the wrinkle to flatten it out. It worked pretty well on this side. On the other side, the tool slipped and gouged the decal, and I actually tore the decal on this side, and I had to mask around the area and repaint the metallic area. Here I've made a mask around the metallic area of the decal, hopefully to cover up the damaged part. When masking over decals, I'd recommend you have a couple of good clear coats down on top first, and don't use anything too sticky. I'm using Tamiya tape here, and minimize the amount of tape that's actually touching decal. You can do that by putting the tape over a piece of paper or aluminum foil or whatever, so that just a tiny bit of tape is actually sticking to the surface.
The instructions would have you paint the headlight parts, part number 7, of transparent gray. That didn't make much sense to me. In the pictures, it looks like it's black, so I painted them black. Perhaps they meant that the headlight covers should be transparent gray, but with the headlights painted black, I didn't see much point in that. You wouldn't be able to tell anyway.
When installing the mirrors, you might need to trim the pins for locating in the side. the window glass part actually extends down just to the hole, and mine, it seemed like the pin would hit the glass before the mirror part was all the way on. Well, there she is, all done, put together. I hope you enjoyed this review and found it useful. If you like it, go ahead and like it down below. If you have any suggestions on things I could do differently or better, please say so in the comments.